All right, this is how to repair a G35 cluster when your gas gauge isn't working right and it's giving you a code. I have a P0462, I believe, which is the low fuel level, which it's not, and you've already gone and cleaned or replaced your fuel level sensor sending units. Then after you've done that, a lot of people will say if it's not that, then it's the cluster, and you can send out the cluster for repair for like $200, and then you need to take it out and send it in. I wanted to do it myself because I could solder. So if you think you can solder small little resistors on a PCBA or have access to a microscope to solder under, then this is pretty easy and doable for you. First, right down here under this thing, you want to take out that bolt right there. Then this whole thing will pop out. If you just kind of lift on it, these will also pull out, so you can pull on them. But you just kind of pull on this thing and it'll just pop out, and you just need to sit it right there, and that's fine. So then next, there is under the steering wheel, there's one hole that's a screwdriver, that's a Phillips screw, and then here's the third one. It's over here under the ignition. So 1, 2, 3. So we'll take those out real quick. Then once you have 1, 2, 3 screws out, then you can start taking off these panels. So this one, if you just kind of pop this out right there, pop this out on this end, that panel comes out. And then over here, you can just kind of sorry, it's hard to do with one hand. I'm grabbing it from under, and then you can just kind of pop it down, and it's like a puzzle piece, and then this top piece comes off, and then you can pull out this bottom piece. Kind of clips out. You can disconnect this, which is just the steering wheel and display movement, but I didn't, so that I can still like move it around, and you don't really need to disconnect it. But what you do need to do is you need to take out that bolt that's sitting right there. There's one on the other side that's sitting right there, and then there's some further back. But how the easy way to do that is to just take off this little cross member right here. So what we're gonna do is just 1, 2, 3, and then this whole thing will come out, and it's just this one little metal bar. So then from here, you can get to the 2 in the back. It's easier to see it on the right side. This one is up top right here. Mine are new bolts because I didn't have any there. I only had one bolt holding in the cluster. So I went and got new bolts. So there's one. The other one is kind of at the same spot on the other side. So then this one is up top on the other side. And then we got the 2 ones that I showed you that were up front. And then the last one is kind of behind. It's kind of behind there. Oh yeah, the other thing that you can do is you can just pinch this. You see this little tab right there, and then there's one on the bottom. Just pinch those, and that side just pulls out. On the other side, you need to decompress that and pull that out, and then do the same thing. Because I'm just trying to do this real quick, just to show you guys how to do this. And then this is pretty much ready to lift out. We just got to get this disconnected right here. So what I'm going to do is this, push this down. So phone died, but pretty much, yeah, you push that little clip in, pull out that connector, and then just the same thing, you pinch it and pull it out. And then that's pretty much it to get this thing out. You do have to get that one connector that's right there, that's under the mirror adjust. And then in the back, there's two big connectors, and the tabs on the bottom of both. And you can get to them pretty easily, even without looking at them. So then, now that you're looking at this, the first thing you need to do is, if you still have these bolts, which I didn't and I had to go buy, so these ones right here, I'm just gonna, and for reference, I just used number 6 screws for this. I'm not sure if that's the right size or not, but it is what worked. So do those two. All right, now that we've taken out the screws there and there, we can flip it around, and we're going to take out this screw here, and then any screws that are up around here. And this one. Mine didn't have any right here, and you can get more, but that's up to you. Hopefully yours just has them already. So then once you get all those screws out, then what we can kind of do is we lift this off this little peg. We lift this one off this little peg, and then this whole front section should kind of lift out. And it's clipped in right there, but just like turn it a little bit, boom. So then the front section should just lift out too. I just lifted this right off of there. So then now we put this to the side, and now we just got the cluster. And so now we got to take off the front cover. So all it is are these little clips right here. So see how I just lifted that up and you just heard it click like a little bit? So we're just going to do that with all of them. It's easier with a flathead screwdriver just to get all of them a little popped up like that. Boom. Easy as that. Just undo all the clips, and then this thing should lift right out like that, straight through there. And use this chance to clean this thing, because usually they're pretty dirty. So then now, once we're down here, this is kind of the most difficult part of the whole thing. So what you need to do is we need to get to screws that are behind this. And there's one here, there's one here, there's one up here, and one over here. And to do that, we need to pull off the needles, and we need to pull off these bezels. So the bezels are pretty easy. This one has a little hook on the top side. And please ignore my dirty fingernails. I've been working on my car a bunch. So you kind of pull up, but the fingernails allow me to get under these pretty easy, so whatever. So you kind of pull up the bottom side right here. We'll pull up that bottom side, and then we'll kind of rotate it up, and then it'll clip in. You see how that clipped in right there? So then let's do this bezel next. So you just kind of get your finger under there, or a flathead. And mine I had just popped up, so right here. So you just kind of pop them all up. Boom. Same thing on the other side. So there, I got this corner up, and then this one kind of popped up. And just be careful not to break any of the clips. Now, once we're here, the hardest part is getting the needles out. So the needles are going to be a little bit difficult. Some people use a little pry tool that's able to get under there and lift them up. But I just used a flathead screwdriver and my fingers. So if we can position this in a way so that we're kind of looking at it. So what I did is I kind of it's so hard. I'm kind of like gripping it on both sides, and then with the screwdriver I'm kind of under, and then I'm like twisting right there. You see that? I'm working it back and forth, and see there it came off. Now they don't all come off that easy. I just had them off. You got to struggle with them a little bit more, but it is doable. So the next one are these ones, the bigger ones, and it's the same thing. I kind of give it force underneath, and then I'll kind of use a screwdriver, a flathead, to pull it off. And then don't forget, you also have to take off these little things in the center. Sometimes they come like that, and sometimes they don't. So then now, once you get all the needles off of everything, this front bezel should just lift off pretty easily. And then make sure you go all the way over the odometer button, and it should look like this underneath. Now you have access to these 4 screws that you need to undo to get this thing off. And then the next thing, which is probably the most challenging besides the needles, is getting this little screen off and getting all the pins out straight. So be really careful with this. All right, let's get all these screws off, and then we'll work on that. All right, now that you got those screws out, then this should just lift out super easy from the backing. And then you'll have the straight PCBA on the back. So if your LED is not working correctly, I believe it is this pads right here and right here. My LED was working fine, so I didn't touch these, and I don't know which one to do. So I'll put up the diagram that Richie put up, and then you'll be able to solder those. But the ones that we're after for the gauge that's not functioning correctly and causing a check engine light, or it's reading too high, usually it's 462, 463, is under here, is the resistors under here. So the next thing we need to do is lift this off. And we can kind of show you on the other side how to do this, but pretty much there's these little, come on, focus, right here. There's these little pins right here, kind of pins, like you got to kind of push this that way, and then you can lift these off. So there's only 3, and then it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, I kind of just pin this thing sideways that way, and then I'll lift this whole thing, and then see, now it's not pinned under it. And so you just kind of do the same thing over here, kind of move that out, and then after I got that second one, you kind of just bend it up, and the third one just comes out. That's the easy side because there's no screen. The screen is the difficult part. So by far the best way to get this one up, this LCD screen up, is to take 2 flathead screwdrivers on each side and kind of lift it up. You got to make sure that you get those little tabs on the top side around, because they're usually clipped onto that little glass. You see that right there? Mine are on top. You got to unhook them and then get them undone like that. So then now that they're undone, we can go on each side of this and kind of work it up. And you want to make sure you're doing this very straight, because you don't want to fuck this thing up. Now I'm going to put my phone down so I can do this properly and then get this thing up. Okay, there we go. So you just make sure you lift it up and get it out of there. It's okay if the pins are a little bit bent, because you can always bend them back. Be very careful. They're very flimsy. And if you bend them back and forth too many times, you're going to break these. And as long as it's not broken, you're good. So make sure to keep that in a safe spot so it doesn't break. And so this one, we're just going to do the same exact thing as the other side. You're going to pull these back, and then you're going to get it undone. Okay, now that we have both bezels off, now we can lift up this whole thing and reveal the PCBA. And I'm going to throw up the picture that Richie on G35Driver.com forum showed you which ones to do, but I'll outline them right here. It's this one all the way at the corner, which says 182 on it, R151. And this one right here, R145. This one right here, R15. R15. This one right here, R158. R153. This one right here. This one right here. This one right here. It's pretty much all the ones in this area that look like those resistors. And mine are already soldered because I already did that. So I'll show you kind of how to solder them real quick. All right, so now once we are able to take a look at this and we know where all the resistors are that we need to resolder, it's easiest if you can put it under a microscope. Luckily at my work, we have one that it can just use with the soldering iron. It's just real helpful to have a teeny tiny point on your soldering iron. So then if we line them up, let's see if we can even see this. Right, there we go. This is the one we were looking at right here. And you just want to add some more solder to each of the sides and reflow it. Mine weren't visually shifted or anything. It was probably just a cold solder joint. So this is one that I already did, this 161 right here. You can see I just added more solder to each side. I am working right here on this one, 222. What I'm going to do first is hit it with a little bit of flux paste just on the side that I'm doing it with. And then I'm going to actually turn it. That's only so that my soldering iron comes in at an angle, so I don't have to turn my arm a lot. Then what I'm going to do is grab my little piece of solder, and I'm going to get a tiny little bit on my iron just to add to the base, and then under the microscope I can go in and just add some more, wait for it to flow, and then pull it away. Make sure you clean it every time, and then I'm going to clean it up right there. And I'm kind of swiping away to make sure that there's not a ton just sitting on there. So then it's nice and all flowed, and then make sure you clean it every time. I'm cleaning it on this like steel wool right here. There's a lot of videos on how to solder, so that's easy enough to just look up and then watch someone's. Then I'm going to do the other side. I'll let it cool down for a second so that you're not just holding a ton of heat on there. Then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get a little bit of solder. The only reason I put a little bit of solder on the iron beforehand is because my solder is too thick. So if I had thinner solder, I'd probably just go straight on. You want to make sure that you're not hitting anything with the back side of your soldering iron. Clean it off. Make sure there's not too much on there. Clean it off again. Oh, that came out money. So then just make sure there's not any loose solder balls anywhere on here. And then now here's what the final product looks like. So that was a real quick overview on how to just reflow these resistors. And then now we're going to try to put it back in the car and realign the needles. All right, so then after that, you want to reassemble it up until the point where you're going to put the front screen on. You want to leave that off and leave the needles off. So you want to screw in the white bezel onto the backing plate with the PCB board, and then you want to put on these bezels and the little ring in the center. So then we're going to get into the car, put it in, and then we got to align it for the needles. So what I'm going to do right here is I'm going to put it in right here, and I'm going to plug in those two plugs, and then we're just going to leave it sitting there, and we're going to go through the self-test mode. And then we're going to be able to set the needles at the right spot and then install the needles. Okay, so we need to put the key in, and we turn it to the on position, and then everything should light up here, right here. We're going to scroll until we get to A. Then we're going to hold it down until you see all zeros like that. Then we're going to turn it all the way off, and then we're going to turn it all the way back to on. Wait for it to light up. We'll go 1, 2, 3. And then so now you can see that it's all 8s. So when we hit this, the needle should be at 0, and then when we press this in again, it should go like halfway, and then come back to 0, and then go halfway. So then, now that we've let go and it's in this test mode, we're gonna take one of the long needles, or any of the needles really, and then we're gonna line it up so that it's going right to the bottom, and then we're gonna shove it in there. We're not gonna push it all the way in, just so it's ready to go, and then we're gonna test it. Look at that. Money. So I'm gonna put the other one on. Put the other one on right here, and it's gonna be, see how it wants to sit up there? I want it to go all the way to the bottom. Like down there. Push it on a little bit, and then now I'm gonna press it. It's gonna go up to like halfway. Right there. And I would suggest not pushing these buttons in, or these needles in all the way, because in case you need to pull them again, you remember how hard it was to pull them out when we disassembled it. So then I'm just going to do the other two, which are out of frame, which I can't do while holding the phone too, and I'll get back to you. And then when you're done, they should all be resting at the bottom on the little stoppers, and then when you press this, they should all move up like that. There we go. Down like that. And then when you're all done, then we're gonna turn it off, and that'll set them into position. And then so when we turn it back to on, they should all go to the right positions. Dang, I'm that out of gas. All right, and then to test it, I'm going to start the car. Boom. So then definitely my tach is working. My gas gauge was reading a lot higher before, so maybe I did fix it, but we'll see. I definitely got to clear the code because the code's still there, and then drive it and we'll see. Okay, so circling back, you kind of put you put the big needles, you put all of the needles when you're in that test mode directly at where 0 is. So on the big ones like the tach, it's going to be resting at 0 against the little stopper. But on like the coolant, it's not. The stopper is lower than 0. You want to do that big line right there, so you have it angled right at that big line. Otherwise, it'll read too low. Same thing with the fuel. So if it reads all the way. If it's against the little stopper, it's too low. You want it against this line right there, the big line at the bottom when you have an empty tank. And then recheck it, and you might want to make some adjustments. So what I did is I just left the cover off, and then I put one bolt in, the easiest one to get to, which is this one right here. And then I'm just going to probably drive this around for a little bit. I'll put turn signals back on and such. But so that I don't, when I need to readjust it, it'll just be easy without the glass on. Update, so I had to drive it around for a little bit and then kind of check out the gauge. It was hanging above the quarter tank level, but then I got my light coming on, the like low gas light, and so I thought I should fill up at this point, and so I did, and then it filled up, and the needle went all the way like over here, way to the left of the F. So I knew it was set too high and it was reading too high. So I set it for like slightly above the F, because I feel like that's how it is when it's completely full. And then we'll just have to reevaluate and measure the gas each time I fill up to get this more accurate needle wise. So it does take a little bit of trial and error and just like dealing with it. So that's why I left the whole plate off, so that I could just continue to mess with it and everything like that. But the check engine light has not come back. The car's not on, so it just shows that there. But yeah, it looks like it fixed it. All right, I hope you guys liked the video. Please give a thumbs up if you like it. This was something that I could not find any information on except one article on a forum with one diagram. So I decided to try to make a video to show how it's done, so it'd be a little bit easier for people encountering the same thing, and they don't have to pay $200 to send out your cluster to get it repaired and fixed. So you can do it yourself. Just be patient, and you got this. Peace.